if I'm making a decision, that after I make the decision, usually, or right at the time, if I pause and reflect and I write my principle down. In other words, principle is sort of a recipe. What would I use how would I make that decision? And what are the criteria around it? I find that I make it much more clear. It becomes clearer, and it applies to the next thing that comes along. It'll be that way because everything happens over and over and over again. And I think people make the mistake of looking at just the one like it's the first one. They have the first problem of this sort, or the first child, or whatever it is. And this has been happening plenty of times. And so if you have the principles, I found that helped me think more clearly about it, and it helped me communicate better, like why. And so over the last 30 years or so, that's what I've done. I did it originally to communicate very well with the people I work with. I set up my company, and it was very important to have good communication. And then we could debate the principles. And so that's the process. I urge people to do that. There are many excellent decision makers, and I just wish that they wrote down their principles when this sets. So, for example, we'll be talking about Henry Kissinger, and his new book is going to come out with a book on leadership. And don't just describe the leaders, describe then what about them were the essential elements to make a good leader under what circumstances. Mm-hmm. And so if we think about that, then you begin to think in a principled way. And then when you start to think in a principled way, life becomes, it's so much easier to make decisions, and it's so much less confusing, because it's like coming up on a species and you say, okay, well, what species is it? Not just it's a thing. No, what species is it, and how do I deal with that species effectively? Mm-hmm. And so that's what that is. And so I encourage people to write it down. I wish anybody who's successful wrote down their principles or their recipes for making those types of decisions.